COVID hit, the whole world stopped. And so did my basketball career. Me and God were at a standoff. And that's never the best place to be. But that's where I was. Because I'm like, Lord, I hear you. I got these new Kobe's, though. I don't know if you're familiar with Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bean Bryant, his shoes. Yeah, no. I ain't giving that up, cuz. Nah. Her response was, sounds like you need to pray on that. I said, oh, okay. And deep down, y'all, in my heart, I really knew. Like, all right, if I pray on this, I'm going to have to give it up. We were talking about her, how good she looked, how bad she was. I was all in agreement. I was down. I was like, yeah, heck yeah. Yeah, I feel that. She looked me dead in my face and said, wait, I thought you was gay. I was like, what? The process that I experienced may not be the same process that you experience. But it's a process, and God makes room for that. And process always brings about progression in daily decisions. And the point of me sharing that is that I want you to just know that where you are is where you're able to start. Process demands you to be present, to be grounded. And a part of being present is being able to feel what you feel, being honest about what you feel, being honest about where you are, being honest about who you are, and being honest about the decisions you've made that perhaps have played a role in where you are, in order to make different decisions and to live more authentically down the line. What's happening? What's up? What's going on, man? It's your boy, Sean Walker, aka Grape Juice. If you've been kicking it over here on this channel, this is obviously a new format. This is obviously a whole new deal. And it's because this is a relaunching of the channel, if you will, a relaunching of everything on this side of YouTube in regards to the content being put out here and how we're going to go about moving forward in this. This is going to be interesting because all of this is going to be on the fly. A lot of this conversation. And so just buckle in, enjoy yourself, grab a drink, sit down, and chill with your boy as we just aim to rebrand, repurpose, represent everything about this channel, what we're going to be talking about, what's the goal, what's the vision, but also just understanding this is a safe space to heal, a safe space to grow, a safe space to learn how to navigate relationships in a healthy way with truth being your foundation. If you've been following this channel for a while, I would love to know the OGs in the comments section, all of those things, because we've been through a lot. We've journeyed through a lot. It all started with a few little messages here and there that are still uploaded. Don't cook me, okay? It was real early on. I was really pushed and encouraged to do these things. A lot of stuff that I was studying and on my heart that I started sharing. Humble beginnings, right? Humble beginnings. And we could be proud of that, right? You and me, just me and you, right? Just me and you. We could be proud of that. And long story short, as those things continue to be put out, we started putting out what's called Summary in 60s. So many people that still come through on the channel and comment and counter those videos and show appreciation of how much those videos are helpful for their understanding of the scriptures and everything. And I think that's such a dope thing. And our whole goal there was to just summarize scriptures of the Bible, chapters of the Bible in 60 seconds, just as a means to introduce the Bible to so many people, whether you are a believer who has never really dived into your Bible or somebody who has never even heard the Bible and would like to, in some way, shape, or form, learn some information on perspectives on the text. And so fast forward, after doing that for some time, we transitioned to basketball. Now we're doing kind of both simultaneously. We're doing some basketball content, which is still uploaded. You can go watch your boy hoop with a point of view camera. But before we got the point of view camera through the GoPro, we were just setting our phone up in the gym and getting stuff popping, games, and all these kinds of things that at first was used for film because your boy was a basketball player aiming and pursuing after pro. And, before COVID hit, we were on track. We had graduated high school at 6'6", broke some records, averaged a double-double in high school, and didn't have any offers. Was a varsity one-year player after being cut by a basketball team from middle school up till about sophomore year in high school. It was junior year that I made my first team. I was 6'3" at the time, tall, underdeveloped, but a hard worker. And it was the hard work and the perseverance and the resilience that allowed me to go and play at higher levels, including varsity as a senior in high school. Ended up becoming captain, one of 3 captains on the team, and was played a huge role in the leading of the team to the school's first ever playoff victory. So dope. I still remember that buzzer beater like it was yesterday. It was crazy. Maybe I'll show a clip here. But after that, I took on a journey in trying to grow pro. That was really where my heart was. In a lot of ways, my identity was wrapped up in hoops. Being a tall guy, everywhere I go, people are not only always asking my height, but if I'm in the gym, if I'm playing basketball, you gonna go pro one day, this, that, and the third. And as much as it was a part of my ambition, it was also something that started to create a level of expectation on my shoulders to start going after. And it wasn't long until I started playing in a field that was actually getting me closer to being a pro. I started out playing traveling JUCO, and then I went from there to playing a semi-professional team with a trainer that I was working with, and who was just pouring into me. He created his own team, semi-professional. Boom, we were taking off, and then got a call up after playing twice this academy that was actually interested in me in a little circuit that I was doing in my senior year. And of course, this story's all gonna make sense. Just hang with me. Again, grab your drink, relax, enjoy some conversation, get to know your boy a little bit, because this is gonna be a whole new format. All of this is gonna make sense in the end. But I started playing with this academy, and then COVID hit. You know what I'm saying? And I was really in a good position. The coach was really pouring into me. Players around me were really investing into me. Okay, shout out to the GoPro. Players were really investing into me, really, really pouring into me and helping me out. And I was developing, coming along. COVID hit, the whole world stopped, and so did my basketball career. And it was so crazy, man, because I remember being in my room. It was a late night. All the fellas at this point had just gotten off the game. At this point, we all in the party. We gaming day in, day out. Call of Duty, Warzone, Madden, you name it. Whether I'm getting carried, I'm getting whooped. I'm doing the whooping. I didn't really do anything to carry. I ain't gonna cap. But we were, everybody had gotten off. And I had just sat down and was looking at a stream of a lady that I was following who was also in college. And she was doing like a little prayer night. Wasn't letting but like maybe 6-10 people in the chat on the Instagram live. Forget her name. But she was so instrumental to what I would do next because I got into the chat. And it was a repetitive thought that was in my mind. Like, hey, yo, I feel like I'm supposed to be praying to give this up and really accept after what God has put on my heart and called me to do, which is something that he had been putting on my heart for the longest to do, and that's teach. It's communicate the gospel in so many ways. But me and God were at a standoff, and that's never the best place to be. But that's where I was. Because I'm like, Lord, I hear you. I got these new Kobe's, though. I don't know if you're familiar with Kobe Bean Bryant, his shoes. Yeah, no, I ain't giving that up, cuz. Nah. No, I'm trying to hoop. That's what I've been wanting. That's what I've been pursuing. And the way I felt that he was approaching me in this space was more like, okay, I mean, you could go back, but, we'll be here again. It just, I can't say that it'll be in the same condition. I can't say that it'll be in the same space. I can't say it'll be this calm. And so I brought this up in the chat, in the live stream. And her response was, sounds like you need to pray on that. I said, oh, okay. And deep down, y'all, in my heart, I really knew. Like, all right, if I pray on this, I'm going to have to give it up. If I pray on this, I'm going to have to give it up. And I had already knew. And I go down and pray anyway. And the prayer I prayed was, Lord, if you want me to go after basketball, put that same fire in me that you put in me when I first started pursuing after it, when I was getting cut left and right. And it was just burning in me to make a team, burning in me to prove to myself that I'm good enough to be a part of it, prove to others who clowned me, who laughed, and who in a lot of ways took what they had for granted, and me being in that same position, never taking it for granted, and the hard work paying off. I said, Lord, put that same fire in me that I had then. But Lord, if you don't want me to, take it away. Y'all, I kid you not, to this day, I don't have the same fire. Of course, I hoop for fun when I get the opportunity with a community, a men's group from a local church that I'm a part of around where I'm at. And obviously people that I'll connect with every once in a while to go hoop. It's always a fun time, but it's never something that I'm out to prove myself, to, prove that I can still play, prove that I'm the best person on the court, carry a chip on my shoulder, and try to be perfect in everything I did on the court as I was previously in pursuing pro. And so all of that has transitioned into teaching, into communicating, into pouring into people, loving on people, leading people in those spaces. And it all had a small beginning. It's in the same year that I started growing closer in my relationship with God. Started reading my Bible for the first time. And the first book of the Bible that I read was Revelation. I don't say that to sound so dope or so cool or weird, because I don't ever encourage anybody to go through Revelations as like the first book that you read. But my mindset at the time, because it was still something that was so fresh to me. I'm not new to God. I'm not new to Jesus. I grew up in church, a Christian household, parents who raised us up in Missionary Baptist Church. And so I'm very familiar with God, very familiar with Jesus. A legitimate relationship, though, is one that is starting to start going deeper and being cultivated. But I did Revelation because it was a book that I was always told, especially by my parents, maybe more so my mom than anything, that was a scary book. I remember having small conversations where she was like, yeah, I wouldn't read that book. Because not only was it really, really challenging to understand and scary, but at the same time, you would think you missed it, how crazy the world is. And, I've had various conversations with other people in high school about it too, out of curiosity. People who I went to church, there were some conversations that sparked up in the locker room a few times here and there. Like, what does the Bible say about sex? Does the Bible really say you can't have sex before marriage? And those guys having conversations about it. I never really stepped in because I wasn't so biblically literate, but I could only repeat what I had grown up knowing and learning in church. But I never really participated in those conversations. So I digress. So starting in Revelation was really more about, okay, this seems like a book that people just stay away from. I really want to see why. What's in here that people are staying away from? And I kid you not, this was my first time reading through it. And the biggest thing that it confirmed for me was that my faith remains in the cross, in Christ, in his crucifixion, burial, and resurrection. It was reading through Revelation that I learned that the Old Testament is looking to the cross. The Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are at the foot of the cross. It's the cross experience. And then Acts through Revelation is reflecting back, remembering the cross, remembering what Christ did on the cross, remembering his finished works, remembering his death, burial, and resurrection. And so Revelation really opened my eyes to see those things. Despite all I will say, despite all the candlesticks, the churches that are announced in the beginning of the book, to the two witnesses that end up coming down, who are seemingly pointing to Enoch and Elijah. I mean, we have so many conversations on that now that I've read it multiple times and still don't really fully have a grasp on it. So I don't want to sound like I got it all together. I don't, right? Revelation is crazy. But it was just the first book that I read. And I was like, cool. So getting to better understand that my faith is in the evidence of Christ on the cross, Christ going to the cross, Christ resurrecting 3 days later. All right, cool, bet. And so then it wasn't that long after I read through Revelation that I just started going through the Bible. I started back at Genesis. And here's what's so interesting about this same time of COVID happening, the world stopping, my basketball career coming to an end, now I'm in a space where like my identity is like shaken. I'm really having to restart, really having to refresh in a whole lot of things. Um, I am still at this time struggling through a pornography addiction. Um, Actually coming out on the end of it, in terms of actually at this time, I had already put down pornography and I had stepped into a space of healing through it, um, overcoming masturbation, all those things. And so, which is another story in and of itself. And I do have a playlist on this channel currently that I express my story with masturbation and pornography and all those kind of things. I have that linked in the description below. Maybe there's a day we're coming where we revamp it in this new style of content that we do and connecting with you guys and creating a safe space, with the mission of helping men heal, helping people heal, and learning to do relationships the right way. But so in part of telling my story and kind of picking up at COVID, because it's kind of where all this is going to start. I started, this was at the same time where I was on dating apps. I was the same time I was still trying to figure out if I wanted to be in a romantic relationship or not. Singleness was not something that I was trying to rest in, all for the sake of trying to save face, trying to prove to myself and others who assumed that because I wasn't doing what other guys were doing at the time, I was really in some way, shape, or form afraid that other people were assuming that I was gay. But that all started in freshman year of high school. And that's actually what started and really kicked off the pornographic addiction, in a very elevated way. When a friend of mine, so-called friend of mine at the time, we were talking about some star stepper. They were doing like a routine downstairs at the back doors of the high school. And we were talking about her, how good she looked, how bad she was. I was all in agreement. I was down. I was like, yeah, heck yeah. Yeah, I feel that. She looked me dead in my face and said, wait, I thought you was gay. I was like, what? No. What are we talking about here? And I could only think that she came to that conclusion because, I wasn't doing what other guys in my class at the time were doing. Dating, kissing other girls, dropping girls off at class, just doing a lot of the other stuff that guys were doing. And so that subconsciously took me on a trip and on a road to basically putting on a mask, trying to fit in, trying to be like the other guys around and talk a big game. But in all reality, it wasn't real. And it was all in the name of making sure that no one else thought what she thought and what she repeated to me. And so, of course, fast forward through high school with that experience, with that now ingrained in my mind. And then obviously in early college, and then obviously coming into the pandemic that we're parked at here in this story. It is so interesting because the dating apps, trying to figure out how many girls I can have in my phone, feeling like I'm catching up on all the things that I may have missed out in high school due to not being able to participate in dating and doing all the things that my friends were doing because I came from a strict home. Yo, I'm 6'6" at the time. There's no way I'm sneaking out the house, bro. You can't miss me. I'm too loud, too noisy, too big to be doing. Can't do it. Never really had that type of boldness about me to step out and do things like that. And so when college came around and I had a little bit more rope, a little bit more freedom, I had moved into an apartment with my brother, my older brother, who was finishing out his degree at UNT in college, and I joined him and started my freshman year. It's just a lot of opportunity to step into stuff. I didn't even do that still outside of things that I did, through my phone, dating apps, and just doing all kinds of stuff, dirty talking, saying things I would do pervertedly that I would never do if I was given the opportunity, and just not being a wise individual at all. And so, the dating apps is the reason I bring this up is because at that same time of me learning to develop my relationship with Jesus in the early stages of me reading and growing in a discipline, I got Genesis open, y'all. I got Genesis open. You know what I'm saying? And it's going on midday. It's 10, 11 o'clock. I have eaten breakfast, all those kinds of things. I'm coming back into the room. I'm sitting down. I got the Bible open. And check it. And I'm sitting in the seat and I'm on the date nap. You know what I'm saying? And I'm scrolling, swiping, trying to see who's the next girl I'm gonna get a Snapchat. I'm gonna match. I'm gonna just have a quick conversation with and not even do nothing with and move on and move forward. Um, and the reason I bring that up is because I think it's really easy to get into a space where you feel like um, it's all or nothing. And when I say all or nothing, I mean you begin to really believe that, well, shoot, man, if I'm not going to read my Bible consistently, then I'm just not going to read it at all. If I'm not going to come in and have my mind focused on Jesus, I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on Jesus, right? If I don't come in with that kind of energy, then why even bother? Why even bother? I've talked to a lot of people who have moved that way, and I shared that piece because even I myself, when I really started diving into Scripture and reading it for myself, studying it and really coming to a closer relationship with Jesus, even I had devices that I was still in, but slowly stepping out of as a result. And when I was slowly stepping out of that, I was making more room to really, really listen in on what Jesus had to say through his word. I kept showing up. I kept being disciplined. I kept staying. I kept reading. I kept going through. And then over time, I stopped picking up the phone, getting on the dating apps. I stopped, getting on Snapchat and start my day off with the phone in my hand. And it became more and more of like, I'm excited to get into my word. I'm excited to read the Bible this morning. I'm excited to just dig into it and to study it. And that was all a transformational process for me. I never started coming in telling myself like, okay, man, like I gotta have everything together. I can't be struggling here. I can't be having this vice and this hookup here. I can't be on a date nap at the same time with my Bible open. Like, nah, it just all was stuff that I was kind of programmed into doing in my everyday. But now I'm starting to include the Bible. And so when I started including the Bible and I started being, growing in that discipline, even if I showed up for just 5 minutes, even if I spent an hour with my Bible open and on the dating app, but spent 10 minutes reading because I had finally came to, I was like, shoot, man, I've been scrolling for like an hour. And then I got my chapter in, and it did start out as like a cool check mark. It did start out as, all right, cool, I got my chapter in, is what it is. But the more I started showing up, the more I kept showing up, the more consistent I was becoming. I was able to build that relationship in such a more meaningful way. And all of those things started slowly fading away. And scripture becoming what I started my day with. Prayer becoming what I started my day with. And I share all that as a part of my story. And there's so many different intricacies and so many things that I'm looking forward to sharing with you guys as a means of creating a safe space, as a means of being an example of what doing the healing work can look like for you as you're in transition, as you're going through struggling things, as you're overcoming addictions, as you are leaving relationships, as people are leaving, people are coming and going, as relationship statuses change, as seasons change, and being able to help you navigate through that. One of the beautiful things that I really, really loved about that was that I was in process. I was able to be in process, and God made room for my process wherever I was and however I started. And I just think as we're sitting here on this couch recording this very first episode and releasing it raw, by the way, I'll just let you know, like you're going to get these going to be some pods, like pod style type of content. I just think it is extremely, extremely important that when you say yes to God, you choose to be in process with him as well. And that process looks different for so many people. The process that I experience may not be the same process that you experience, but it's a process, and God makes room for that. And process always brings about progression in daily decisions. I didn't stay looking at the dating apps before I started reading my Bible. I didn't stay there, but that's how I started. And the point of me sharing that is that I want you to just know that where you are is where you're able to start. Like you don't need to be some kind of scholar and theologian and have all your sermon notes prepared, come in with the best prayer known to man. You don't need to be in your prayer closet for 3-4 hours at a time. All you need is a willing heart and a willingness to say, I want to meet the God of the universe to start my day. I'm going to pull up a seat. And I'm going to kick it with the God of the universe. Every morning he wakes me up and he wants to talk with me. He has something to say to me. Maybe not even say anything at all necessarily, but just his presence that makes up all the difference. And it's getting in that room and getting in that space that will slowly begin to drown out all the things that maybe you've been running to as void fillers for your pains and for your emotional wounds. Because let's face it, right? Like a lot of the stuff that we're carrying once upon a time, if not now, maybe a later or earlier point in life, a lot of that stuff is just serving as distractions. Like, instead of dealing with the emotions, instead of dealing with the wounds that we're facing, instead of dealing with the challenges, instead of admitting our wrongs, instead of admitting our unhealed wounds, we're just numbing them. Maybe it's pornography, maybe it's masturbation, maybe it's trying to talk to anybody and everybody. The thought of being alone, the thought of being in silence, the thought of being separated, it's uncomfortable for you. Maybe it's work, right? You're a workaholic. Don't worry, I can relate. I got some workaholic tendencies in me too. It's real easy to stay up late, get your hands in everything and keep your hands in everything as a means of not being able to feel what it is that is actually bothering you, to actually address the pains that are pushing you further and further away from getting connected to your body, getting connected to your emotions, getting reconnected to your mind. But even more important than that, getting connected to the Father who made you, designed you, made you wonderfully and beautifully, and desires to speak with you, to share space and hold space with you, and desires a relationship with you. And I think in the midst of all those experiences that we may have, and all those wounds that we may be running from, all those opportunities that we may be avoiding, all for the sake of not wanting to feel certain things, I just want to use this opportunity with the story that I shared briefly, because you kind of just picked up in the middle. There's probably so much more that we could talk about, but this is kind of the direction and flow of the conversation, so we're just going to go with it, right? The point in sharing all that is that not only is process something that God welcomes, starting where you are is not only something that God welcomes, but it's really important to be present where you are. And in order for process to really be something that becomes a stamp in your life, it requires you to be present. It requires you to be present in who you are. It requires you to be self-aware, knowing who you are, where you are, and what you're doing. It requires you to settle down and become grounded. It requires you to take a look around. Take a second to breathe from the hustle and bustle of life, from the daily grind and the mundane that you're experiencing. To take a break from the social media and all the things that you're hearing on a daily basis that are repetitively sounding off in your ear. And be called into a space and just a moment of rest, a moment of reassurance, a moment of recognizing this is where I am. And I believe that God has more for me. And in order to really get to see more and more maybe what God desires to do through me, which will always be greater than what I ever will do for him, the first step is to make a decision to get into his presence. And sometimes that decision requires, no, not even sometimes. I promise you, when you're ready to make that decision, you're going to have to let go of something. For me, it was basketball. That's what we started this whole conversation with. I had to lay that down. One time I really wanted to do. I had so many dreams and aspirations, but it was something that my heart was impressed to do so much. And I made the decision to let it go. And I'll tell you what, I haven't regretted it since I did, because I've learned so much and grown so much more than what basketball could ever do for me. The connections, the relationships, the opportunities, the transformation inwardly that has occurred in my life all happened on the brink, on the other end of letting go of something that I never thought I would leave. Letting go of something that I never thought I was going to walk away from, and I actually thought I was going to be able to make a living off of at one point or another. And going through that process of starting over. Gosh, I guess there's so much that we can have discussions on. Trust me, we'll get there. But just the thought of starting over, and sometimes starting over and being willing to start over, means the opportunity to take that risk, to step into the unknown, to step into the uncertainty, and being willing to say yes to God, and knowing that my hand in his hand is safer than the known. It's greater to me than the light itself. He is the light. So my hand in his hand is simply the greatest decision I could ever make, because it's greater than what I can see, safer than the known. And I think when we really just let that sink in, it ought to encourage us to take that step and still do it afraid. I didn't know that this is where I'd be, and yet here we are. Like, it's here we are. And so I hope a part of that story makes sense. I hope a glimpse of that is helpful. I hope that something in those thoughts is beneficial, because the biggest things that I want to get to you is to be willing to start where you are. Start with what you have. See the value in what you have already, because there's something valuable within your hands and within your reach that is able to be used as a starting point. May not be something that you always have, but it's what you have today. And today matters. Every day matters. And as you're in process, it's important that you learn to become present. Process demands you to be present, to be grounded. And a part of being present is being able to feel what you feel, being honest about what you feel, being honest about where you are, being honest about who you are, and being honest about the decisions you've made that perhaps have played a role in where you are, in order to make different decisions and to live more authentically down the line. And of course, being able to do that and live that kind of life with Christ by your side. And I think when we learn to do that, there will come time, and as I'll say it like this, as we are learning to do that, decisions will show up. Decisions will have to be made. Things will have to be dropped. Maybe certain desires that we were praying and hoping God would fulfill, or we're going to have to let go. Because even though it's something we want, it's not something God wants for us. And it's not to say that God doesn't desire to see us happy, but I think as believers, we got to get into the space where we are willing to choose God, even when what he believes is best for us, what he knows to be best for us, isn't what maybe will make us happy in the moment, but will actually make us rest in peace in the long run. And I choose peace over happiness. Happiness is fleeting, peace is sustaining. So I choose peace, right? And so I just think at the brink of us learning to be in process and being present, it requires a pruning. I don't mean to be all preachy to you, but just, hey, hear me out, right? When you're in process, it requires you to be present. And when you become present, you become more aware of who you are, where you are, and what you're doing. You become more in tune with your body. You become more in tune with your thoughts. You become more present and aware of the things that are showing up, the emotional wounds that you have yet addressed, the pains that are still lingering, the holes and craters that have been created from other relationships and encounters that you've had throughout your life that you have looked to numb as in every way possible, but it still hasn't worked. It still hasn't worked, and still here we are with the same triggers, the same issues, the same problems. Maybe we did try therapy, but if we're being honest, the therapist just gave us room to vent, but didn't give us any applications to apply, any homework to take back home, any work to actually apply that would actually benefit us and help us in this transformational journey. And so we're here. We're here. It seems like it's a cycle. It seems like it's repetitive. It seems like nothing's working. It seems like you're stuck. It seems like you've done everything you can and you're just kind of in a place where you're on autopilot. Like I'm good. I'm Gucci. And I just think that when it comes to being willing to be in process and then becoming present, pruning happens. And when pruning takes place, sometimes we're scared of that because we're thinking, but I'm letting go of something that I've always wanted to do. I'm letting go of something that I've always wanted to accomplish. I've always thought my identity was in. I always thought that if I had it, I'd be more fulfilled, that I now bring meaning and purpose to life and to the family around me. This is the way that I always thought I'd provide for my future family. I'd actually help my moms get out of this space. I'd help this person get out of this struggling hole. I'd be able to supply, but dang, like letting go of that is a big deal. This has been a part of my life for so long. This person has been a part of my life for so long. This device has been a part of my life for so long. This sport has been a part of my life so long. I can't imagine what life is like without it. Can't imagine what life is like without them. But yet, when we become more present, it's not just becoming more present with where we are and who we are and becoming more grounded in it. We're also learning in the midst of becoming more present with ourselves, we're becoming more present. We have an opportunity to become more present with God through prayer, through seeking his face, through turning to God in the midst of some of the most vulnerable aspects and seasons of our lives and saying, Lord, what do you want? What do you want for me? What do you want with me? What do you want to do through me? And really seeking his face and allowing him to be the dominant or predominant voice in our ear. So that way we are being able to be reprogrammed in truth and not allowing our feelings to lead the way. And when it comes to that, pruning will show up. I just want you to be prepared. Like as you're in process and becoming present, pruning is going to show up. Decisions are going to have to be made where you're going to have to let go of something. You're going to have to transition out of something. You're going to have to put something down in order to really be able to receive what God is wanting to do through you. And I know how difficult that can be. I know how challenging that can be. I know how scary that can be, especially going into spaces that you're unfamiliar with and that you're filled with uncertainty about. Even when it comes to your healing, even when it comes to your relationships, even when it comes to letting go of people, letting go of hurt, letting go of pain. You've been used to carrying those weights for so long, you don't even know what life is like without holding on to anger. You don't even know what a life of peace feels like because you've been walking around with so much guilt and shame, and it's become the norm. So you walk around and when people say, how are you? It's an automatic good when you really know you're bad, you're terrible, you're feeling really rough. You don't even have the opportunity to process your feelings anymore. It is what it is. You've grown numb to so much. All these different descriptions that we can throw out in the midst. We're going to have to make a decision. And I want to encourage you that the best decisions you can make is choosing to remain in Christ, choosing to heal with Christ, choosing to allow him to speak to you oh so tenderly, so graciously, so mercifully, and allow his tender words to comfort your heart and to speak to your fear, to give you the boldness you need to step into what he's leading you to. And trust me, I'm telling you, as I'm sharing this to you, I need this just as much. I'm telling you, this whole space, like it feels so weird because your boy's been doing content. Your boy's been out here in these content streets and doing this and revamping everything this is just, it feels so new. And it really feels scary because your boy has struggled for a while, even in the space of coaching and helping so many other people so far. It's like, bro, I don't want to be in a position where I'm speaking about my living. I don't want to be in a position of an echo chamber, hearing something dope and repeating it and sounding like I'm the man. I don't want to get into a position where I'm misguiding people because, hey, I haven't really experienced what they've experienced. And as I've just this past week, as I'm recording this, just been resting in spaces of crazy confirmations of what God is pushing me into, this space being included and going deeper into coaching and all those kinds of things. It's scary, yo. So yeah, I'm out here and I'm scared. For sure. Like, your boy is scared. But I'm choosing to do it. I'm choosing to be obedient because where else am I going to go? What else am I going to do? And since God has promised, since God has said, since God is the ultimate creator who has the ultimate authority and says that he will take care of my needs, and because he's not a deadbeat dad, and he takes care of his children, I'm choosing to trust him and I'm choosing to stay. And that's the decision I've made in the midst of the pruning that I've had to endure as I've become more present in the process that I've been in. And I want to bring some text to this before we wrap up. I've been talking long enough. It's the first pod. Your boy is winded. We're going to have so many conversations. I keep calling it a pod. I don't know why. But, and then we're going to wrap up with just some overarching thoughts of what you can expect over on this channel, the kinds of conversations that we're going to hold space for, and just chilling with your boy, and rocking out. Okay. There's a passage of scripture that comes to mind when it comes to pruning that I really want to hit on, and it's John chapter 15. Your boy's got his Bible. Okay. So y'all gonna be sick of me, because your boy's pulling out his Bible. And not with the goal of Bible thumping you, but we gotta have some references for some of this stuff, man. I don't just want to be talking out the side of my neck and I have no references for you. Okay. And so, John chapter 15 is such a unique chapter. And just for any kind of crazier context about me, at the point of me recording this, I do have a banner that reads grape juice on my YouTube page. Maybe comes a time as you're watching this where it's not there anymore. So you might just have to take me at my word. But I got a banner that reads grape juice, words from the vine. And this is kind of where it eventually kind of transitioned into of where it came from, John chapter 15. But of course, it's originated from a gamer tag I created on Xbox when I was 6th grade. I was real thirsty. Okay, grape juice is my favorite drink. Don't trip. All right, don't act like you don't like grape juice or cran apple or whatever you drink. Okay, whatever it is. All right, mine was grape juice. It was a good time, and so that became the name. And so, but John chapter 15 talks a lot about this idea of pruning. Jesus is preparing his disciples in this context as he is preparing to head to the cross, and the betrayal is about to take place. And he's meeting with his disciples here. And this is what he says. I'm going to read not the whole chapter, but I'm going to read the first looks like 16, not even 16, just the first 10 plus verses. All right, so just walk with me. He says, I am the true grapevine, and my Father is the gardener. This is a New Living Translation, by the way. He says, he cuts off every branch of mine that doesn't produce fruit, and he prunes the branches that do bear fruit, so they will produce even more. Okay, keep that in mind. You have already been pruned and purified by the message I have given you. Remain in me, and I will remain in you, for a branch cannot produce fruit if it is severed from the vine, and you cannot be fruitful unless you remain in me. Yes, I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit, for apart from me, you can do nothing. Anyone who does not remain in me is thrown away like a useless branch and withers. So such branches are gathered into a pile to be burned. But if you remain in me and my words remain in you, you may ask for anything you want and it will be granted. When you produce much fruit, you are my true disciples. This brings great glory to my Father. Okay. And so maybe I won't read the first 10 verses. Actually, we'll stop at 8. So I really want you to pay attention though, because these first couple verses are so key, because he says in verse 3, he says, you have already been pruned and purified by the message I have given you. Remain in me and I will remain in you, for a branch cannot produce fruit if it is severed from the vine, and you cannot be fruitful unless you remain in me. I'm going to back up to verse 2. He cuts off every branch of mine that doesn't produce fruit, and he prunes the branches that do bear fruit so they will produce even more. So when you think of the act of pruning, like even in this cultural context, like gardeners would prune, right? So this pruning aspect is just, instead of just like throwing away the fruit, they would actually cut the fruit from its branch. They would cut the fruit from its growing area, okay, and would replant the seeds out of the fruit so that it would bear more, okay. And so this act of pruning was really, really dope. And and I'll read this too, because I actually have a study Bible, so I always want to at least do my best to keep a lot of these cultural contexts in this proper perspective to give you a good glimpse. So here's what it says. It says the grapevine is a useful, prolific plant. It produces fruit to eat, raisins to store, and wine for meals and ceremonies. A single vine supports numerous branches and bears many grapes. In the Old Testament, grapes symbolize Israel's fruitfulness in doing God's work on the earth. In the Passover meal, the fruit of the vine symbolizes God's goodness to his people. And so here's the next part. It says Jesus, and this is highlighting from chapter 15, verse 2 through 3. So Jesus makes a distinction between two kinds of pruning, cutting off branches and cutting back branches. So fruitful branches are cut back to promote growth. In other words, God must sometimes discipline his people to strengthen our character and faith. But branches don't bear fruit are cut off at the trunk, not only because they are worthless, but also because they can infect the rest of the plant. So people who don't bear fruit for God, or who try to block the efforts of God's followers, will be cut off from his life-giving power. So two kinds of pruning, cutting off branches and cutting back branches. Fruitful branches are cut back to promote growth. Okay. So again, going back to some of the example that I was sharing, when you're pruning and when you're in a pruning space, it is very, very important, because it's gonna hurt and it's gonna suck, because you're cutting away. And in the act of cutting away, you're experiencing loss. A loss here, a loss there, unexpected losses, hurtful losses, and it doesn't negate the pain. Trust me when I tell you, it doesn't get easier. It does hurt. It does suck. And you will find yourself letting go of things that you weren't expecting. People walking out of your life that you weren't expecting. Relationships failing that you weren't expecting. Opportunities that you didn't expect that were closing. Jobs that you didn't expect you were losing. All these things that in a lot of ways challenge our perspective to look at the benefit of pruning, the benefit of loss, and being able to look at it and not look at it in the lens of, God, why me? Or like, yo, God, you're taking so much from me, and I feel like there's nothing left, and I feel like you're not doing anything about it. And give me 1 second, I gotta get this charger. This is basically all I'm looking to say in the midst of this, right? When you're experiencing loss, it's all about your perspective. When it comes to you making a decision, and in the midst of making a decision, you recognize that you're choosing between something you really love, something you really wanted, and going in God's direction. It requires us to make a decision. And oftentimes that decision isn't easy. And I really want you to look at the things that are coming to an end in the midst of you choosing to go where God is leading you. I want you to look at it and consider that there's something more on the other end of what you're choosing to let go of as you're choosing to pursue after Christ. Like, what you're letting go of pales in comparison to what God is willing to give to you if you're choosing to walk with him. Now, I don't want to necessarily paint this picture as if God is just going to give you, everything you could have ever imagined materially and earthly. Because I think that can be a dangerous message too. I just want you to get into a space where you're considering the fact that God's presence is the best place to be. And where God is where we should always want to be, even if it comes at a cost. And oftentimes when it comes to making that decision, disciples make decisions and disciples choose to stay. Because ultimately, when we choose to stay, it comes from a place of not really what God can do for us, but because of for who God is. And recognizing the value of his presence and that his presence is the most valuable thing that we could ever have and cherish. And so the beautiful thing about pruning is that it's not just cutting away and you experiencing loss just to experience it. But there's actually something so valuable in you that needs to come out of you. And loss is sometimes a way God looks to get it out of you. Taking things away and allowing things to fall off from your life is a way for God to draw out what is so valuable in you that is for your benefit, that is to bless people around you, that is for the kingdom. And that is the value of pruning. I want you to go back to what we were talking about, because grapes is a very interesting symbolic gesture in scripture. Because at this time, in this cultural time, if you know how they make wine, it's through crushing of the grapes. And they would, get grapes all together and they would trod on them. They would literally have clean feet. I hope and pray. But they had clean feet. And what they did was they walked on the grapes. They walked on the grapes and they crushed them underneath their feet. And it was the best part of the grape, which was the juice that was fermented. And, after a while it sat in vases, and it became fermented to turn into the wine that they would eventually sell and drink and those kinds of things. It was the crushing that allowed the best part of the grape to flow out. And that was what would eventually become the wine. And I just want to really encourage you that in the midst of pruning, it may feel like you're being crushed, but I want you to look at the value of the crushing. And the value of the crushing is found in what spills out of you in the midst of the crushing you're experiencing. And not only are you able to find out what you're really about and what you really have, the capacity you really have, but you're also going to learn where your allegiance truly lies. And in those spaces, when you choose to stay with God, you cling to him because he is the one that is going to restore you, strengthen you, and give you wisdom for what he is building capacity in you to move forward into. And the only way that you're going to do it is by him stepping in and being given permission to remove things out of your life that are for your benefit. Even if it doesn't feel like it in the moment, and it really hurts, and it really sucks, and it really isn't something that you thought you would experience. Stick with him, because as the longer you move with him, the more that he'll reveal the benefits to the transformation that you'll experience as you continue to walk with him in process, being present and experiencing pruning. But I just really want to repeat this because I think it's so necessary in the pruning space. What allows us to see the value in what is being cut off and what's being ended and what's being severed is what's waiting for us on the other end of that decision. And trusting that God isn't just leaving us out here, but that God is truly invested into us and what he has to pour into us for the greater good of who we are to become, which is so much more important to God than what we'll ever have. And in the process of pruning, even though it hurts, we ought to look at it through the lens and perspective of asking the question, what is this doing in me? What is this pruning and cutting away? What value is this bringing to me? What am I finding myself having to do that I didn't really feel like I needed to do when I had what I had before I lost it? The beautiful thing about learning to become detached from codependency is you become really resourceful. You're no longer being able to lean on the same things that you've been leaning on when you were in trouble, when you were in need, or when you were going through something you needed a quick bailout. Because now when you're separated from those spaces of codependency, whether it's on somebody who was just always there to bail you out when you were in trouble, always there to save you when you were a horrible steward of your money, always there to pick you up and dust the dirt off your face when you fell after making poor decision after poor decision, that these same people were telling you, hey, you probably shouldn't do that, but you just kept going anyway. But yet they were there even after the poor decision you made, even after the passionate, selfish decisions you made. And now they're no longer there. Now they're no longer there to pick you up. Now they're no longer there to save face. Now they're no longer there. Like, it just feels like you've been separated into all these different lanes. I really want to encourage you that those are moments that you're going to be able to learn more about yourself and what you really have the capacity to do. And that's the beauty in it. Because now you become resourceful. You become resourceful in healthy ways, right? Instead of waiting on that person to show up to bail you out to help you pay bills when you really had the money. If you steward your money properly, you could have had the money to pay for those things. Now you just steward your money better. Now you're forced to be put in positions where you have to monitor what you're spending. And you have to be honest about what you have room to spend and what you don't have room to spend based on a budget and keeping your finances in order. Just a quick example, right? I mean, going back to the relationship space. Yeah, they were there. They were always there. They were always there to pick you up and, dust the dirt off your face as you were crying because you hit the floor again. You went back to the relationship when they constantly told you it wasn't a good idea. You ignored the signs. You were so deep in love and you just ignored them. And you've done it so many times, and then at the expense of choosing that person that you probably should not have been with in the beginning. Don't worry, God is grace for us, but just giving us an example. Even though you chose that person that you should have never been connected to, those friends, you ended up treating pretty poorly in the midst of that. You kind of forgot their existence and cut them completely off. And so now they've moved on. Now it's, hey, it is what it is. Your decision. And now it doesn't seem like they're too close anymore. It doesn't seem like they're too available anymore. It doesn't seem like they're too willing to come pick you back up as you keep making these decisions. So now that they're no longer there, and it seems like those relationships have been pruned, there's an ending that has been taking place. There's a cutting off. There's a severing that has happened there. The more fruit that you can bear in such a season could look like us choosing to do the healing work, the honest work, so that way we stop making repetitive, recycled decisions and we choose to make better decisions by becoming more aware of where we are, who we are, and what we're doing, not allowing our emotions to give us direction, but allowing our logic and thinking to then lead how we feel to determine if what we're seeing is actually what we need, or is it just something that we're feeling, but it's not really beneficial to the season that we're in or to the person that we're becoming and who God's calling us to be. So we start making wiser decisions. But check it. Perhaps those wiser decisions don't come about unless we're pruned, unless we do some pruning, unless we experience some severing and some cutting away. So I just want to give you some perspective, and I'm hoping this is making sense. I know I'm kind of ranting at this point. We're shutting it down. But I just really want to encourage you, as you're in process, becoming more present with where you are, with who you're becoming more present with your emotions, present with your body, and more importantly, present with Christ, know that there is going to be a time for pruning where decisions are going to have to be made. And no matter the decision that's going to have to be made, I'm encouraging you to go where God is, because where God is, peace follows. Where God is, blessing follows. Where God is, transformation and maturity follows. Where God is where we always want to be. Moses, before Israel ever had their first opportunity to go to the promised land, God speaks to him and he says, hey, I'm going to take y'all, but I ain't going to go with you. And Moses pumped the brakes. He said, Lord, hey. I'm paraphrasing here, of course. Hey, let's not do that. I don't want to go if you're not going. I don't want to go to the promised land if you're not going. I believe this is in Exodus 33. I mean, I got my Bible open. Why not? Right? I got my Bible open. Why not? No, y'all don't get sick of me. Y'all get sick of me. Get that Bible. That's the book for me. Yeah. Exodus 33. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it real quick. So, and this is a beautiful, and I just want you to really let this sink in, because I think for some reason we've been stuck on this for the rest of the pod, and I think this could be beneficial to somebody. So I want you to check this. This is Exodus 33, verse 15. Now, of course, in this context, God has already told Moses, hey, get up. I'm going to take you and your people to this promised land, but I ain't going there with you. I can't stand to look at them. I'll tear them up. I'll tear all this up. I ain't going. Look at what Moses said in chapter 33, verse 15. Then Moses said, if you don't personally go with us, don't make us leave this place. How will anyone know that you look favorably on me and on your people, if you don't go with us? For your presence among us sets your people and me apart from all other people on the earth. Moses is saying here that if you don't go, I don't want to go. I don't want the promised land without the promise giver. And I just really hope that our hearts are able to become more and more meshed and transformed into the space where we're choosing to go with God where he is. No matter where he's taking us, trusting that where he's taking us is always for our benefit. Because since God cannot sin, God cannot lie, God is incapable of betraying us, it would easily make him the most trustworthy person, right? It has to be. Shout out Jackie O'Perry. She definitely put that together a whole lot better than I try to remember it. But he has to be the most trustworthy person. Since God can't sin, God is incapable of betraying us, God is incapable of lying to us, misleading us, then he has to be the most trustworthy person. And so it's something that we should choose to step into. And yes, it can still be scary, but do it afraid. Faith does not ignore the scary parts of what's in front of us. Faith just says, even though it's scary, I'm still trusting what God promised me and I'm stepping into it. And so where God is where we need to follow. Don't worry, I'm talking to me as I'm talking to you. And I just really hope that we are growing and being willing to step into a space where we are choosing to lean more into where God is, because that's where he desires us to be. That's the greatest place to be. And that's where we'll flourish. All right. And so that's it. Okay. This is the first episode. I don't know how many styles I'll do of this, how many conversations I'll have of this, and all that could be partly shared. Okay. I just gave a glimpse of my story. That was a good place to start. There's so much more to it and so many other things that we can have our conversations on. And I'm looking forward to them. But listen, the point of this entire pod is basically, I keep calling it a pod. It's kind of crazy, but the basis of this is to just simply have conversations just like the one that we're sharing here. Maybe they are set in a series. Maybe it's just something that's on my heart and mind. Maybe something from a recent event. We're just bringing it up. But all of it designed to help us build relationships, healthy relationships with ourselves, with others, and more importantly, with God, and learning to do relationships the right way. I am so invested into seeing other people heal correctly, heal in a beneficial way, and heal in a biblical way in order to be restored, to learn to love again and do life again, and not allow heartbreak, loss, rejection, and all these different experiences that we may have among one another to keep us from experiencing all that God has for us. And so that is my prayer. That is my entire desire of everything I do on this channel. From analogies to stories to maybe stories I might share from conversations I might have had with clients, assuming I get their permission, to, just having conversations about what the Bible says about certain things, to Q&As, all those kinds of things and more. And we're just going to go with the flow and see what God has in this space as we continue to put out episodes. And as long as you guys continue, and I won't even say as long as you guys continue to show up, because I feel like I'm supposed to be here. And so, whether you're here or not, all good. You're welcome. You are welcome. You are safe here. Your thoughts are safe here. Your disagreement is safe here. Your tears, your frustrations, your challenges, everything about you is safe here. And I'm going to take a part of what Uncle Tim Ross shares oftentimes, man, that, their mission is to help others be seen, heard, loved, even if they're not fully agreed, right? Of course, there's another one in there too. I'm kind of forgetting, but that's kind of a similar vibe. And I'm not trying to rip off anything or take anything away from him. I want to create my own space, of course. You guys know that. But I just thought that might be something that you could refer back to as, hey, this is something similar that's being created here. And a safe space to just delve into some conversations, some honest conversations, some confronting and bold conversations that I think are going to be really necessary to your healing, really necessary to your recovery, really necessary to your journey in building your relationship with God, building your relationship with others, and growing in your relationship with you, and learning to do relationships in a healthy way, because there's a lot going on. A lot of us men don't have that space. A lot of us men don't have those spaces to connect in a space of authenticity and vulnerability, in a space of safety, space of containment, but more importantly, with something that is being poured back into you that is beneficial to you, and not just putting a Band-Aid over your wound and calling it a day. And so that's my whole desire in a lot of ways, to really address those wounds head on and giving you applicable things based from scripture, based from a foundation of truth that I think is really going to help you in your healing journey. So, with that being said, welcome. It's your boy, Sean Walker, aka Coach Sean Walker. And I'm so excited, nervous, sure, but excited on what's to come in future episodes and conversations that we share. And like this video, share, you know what I'm saying? Do what it do. If you want to join, cool. If not, cool. I hope this was so beneficial to you. I really do. I hope this was beneficial to you. I hope this was helpful to you. And I can't wait to see you in the next episode, in the next conversation that we have, whatever we might talk about. All right. If you can, do me a favor. Leave me a comment below if you watch to the end. Leave your name, leave your age, and leave a takeaway that you got from this entire conversation. If anything sparked your heart, moved on your heart throughout the midst of this conversation, anything that you resonate with, you relate to, any questions, any concerns, anything, I want to hear from you. Comment below so we can engage, so we can get some more conversation going. And who knows, maybe your question and comment might be mentioned in a future episode where we can unpack it a little bit deeper. I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in. I love you guys. And as always, until next time, be easy and be breezy. Peace.